Chapter 7. The Vicar of Algernon. There was something strangely peaceful about his house. Mary stretched out her hands towards the fire. The silence pleased her. It took away her fear. She watched Francis Davy as he laid the table for supper. "Hannah lives in the village," he said. "She leaves every afternoon at 4. I prefer to be by myself. I like getting my own supper, and then I can choose my own time." She had not yet become used to his white hair and his eyes. His black clothes made them even more noticeable. She was tired, but she swallowed her supper. He poured her out a steaming cup of tea. Now and again, she took a quick look at him, but he seemed to sense it immediately, for he would turn his eyes on her with their cold white look, like that of a blind man, and she would look away again. The warmth of the room and the hot tea made her sleepy, and his gentle voice came from far away. "Why were you wandering on the moor tonight?" Hardly knowing how it happened, she heard her voice reply to his. "I'm in terrible trouble," she said. "Sometimes I think I shall become like my aunt and go out of my mind. I've not been at Jamaica Inn much more than a month, but it seems like 20 years. It's my aunt that worries me. If only I could take her away. But she won't leave Uncle Jos, in spite of his treatment of her. Every night, when I go to bed, I wonder if I shall wake up and hear the wagons. The first time they came, there were 6 or 7 of them, and they brought great packages and boxes that the men stored in the locked room at the end of the passage. A man was killed that night. I saw the rope hanging from a beam downstairs." She stopped, the warm colour flooding her face. "I've never told anyone before. It had to come out. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I've done something terrible." For a moment or two, he did not answer. Then he spoke gently and slowly. "Don't be afraid. Your secret is safe. No one shall know of this but me. When you have rested, I'll take you back, and I'll make your excuses to the landlord if you wish." "Oh, you mustn't do that," said Mary quickly. "If he suspects half of what I've done tonight, he would kill me, and you too. You don't understand. He's a violent man, and nothing would stop him." "Isn't your imagination running away with you a little?" said the vicar. "This is the 19th century, you know, and men don't murder one another without reason. Having gone so far, don't you think you had better let me hear the rest of your story? What is your name, and why are you living at Jamaica Inn?" Mary looked up at the pale eyes in the colourless face, at his white hair, and she thought again how strange he was, this man who might be 21, who might be 60, and who, with his soft voice, could persuade her to admit every secret she possessed if he wanted. She could trust him. That at least was certain. The first part of her story was told in short and broken sentences, beginning with that first Saturday night at the bar, and then working backwards to her arrival at the inn. Her report did not sound true, even to her who knew the truth of it, and she was so tired that she often could not find the words, but paused for thought, and then went back in her story and repeated herself. He heard her to the end with patience, but all the time she felt his eyes watching her, and he had a habit of swallowing from time to time, which she came to recognize and wait for. When she had finished, the vicar got up from his chair and began to walk around the room. "I believe you, of course," he said after a moment or so. "But your story wouldn't be believed in a court of law. And another thing, it's wrong, we all know that, but smuggling goes on all over the country, and half the magistrates make a profit out of it. That shocks you, doesn't it? But you can be sure that it's the truth. I have met Mr. Bassett once or twice, and I believe him to be an honest sort of man, but, between ourselves, a bit of a fool. I can tell you one thing, though. His visit will have frightened your uncle. There won't be any more wagons to Jamaica Inn for some time. I think you can be certain of that. If I were you, I should just wait. Keep a close watch on your uncle, and when the wagons do come again, you can tell me immediately. We can then decide together what should be done." "What about the stranger who disappeared? He was murdered, I'm certain of that. Do you mean to say that nothing can ever be done about it?" "I'm afraid not, unless his body is found, which is extremely unlikely," said the vicar. "In fact, it's quite possible that he was never killed at all. Forgive me, but I think you allowed your imagination to run away with you over that. All you saw was a piece of rope, remember? If you had actually seen the man dead, or even wounded, well, that would be a different matter." "I heard my uncle threaten him. Isn't that enough?" "My dear child, people threaten one another every day of the year, but they don't hang for it. Now, listen to me. I am your friend, and you can trust me. If you ever become worried or frightened, I want you to come and tell me about it. Altanun is only a few miles by the road. That's agreed between us, isn't it?" "Thank you very much." "And now I'm going to drive you back to Jamaica Inn." The thought of returning was hateful to Mary, but it had to be faced. The night was fine. The dark clouds of the early evening had passed away, and the sky was bright with stars. It was a strange, exciting drive. The wind blew in Mary's face. The horse thundered along the hard, white road, and the vicar made no attempt to control it. Mary saw that he was smiling. "Go on," he urged the animal. "Go on, you can go faster than this." And his voice was low and excited, as if he were talking to himself. The effect was unnatural. Mary felt as if he were in another world and had forgotten her existence. He looked like a bird, bending forward in his seat, with his clothes blown by the wind. His arms were like wings. He might be any age. Then he smiled down at her and was human again. "I love these moors," he said. "If you knew them as well as I do, and had seen them in every type of weather, winter and summer, you would love them too. They go back a long way in time. Sometimes I think that they have lived on from another age. The moors were the first things to be made. Afterwards came the forests and the valleys and the sea." Already Mary could see the tall chimneys of Jamaica Inn against the sky. The drive was ended, and the excitement left her. The old fear and hatred of her uncle returned. The vicar stopped his horse just before the yard, beside a grassy bank. "There's no sign of anyone," he said quietly. "It's like a house of the dead. I'm going to look in at the window." She watched him go to the side of the house, and he stood there for a few minutes looking. Then he made a sign to her to follow. "There'll be no argument tonight," with the landlord of Jamaica Inn. Mary followed the direction of his eyes and came forward to the window. Jos Merlin sat at the table unconscious, his great legs stretched out on either side of him, his hat on the back of his head. He looked straight in front of him at the light, his eyes fixed like those of a dead man. A bottle lay with its neck broken on the table, and beside it an empty glass. The fire had burnt away to nothing. Francis Davy pointed to the door. "You can walk inside and go upstairs to bed. Your uncle will not even see you. Good night to you, Mary Yellen. If you're ever in trouble and need me, I shall be waiting for you at Altanun." Then he turned the corner of the house and was gone.